Hey guys, this is Yogen from Fast Coding School. So guys, last week मैंने LinkedIn के ऊपर एक क्वेश्चन पूछा था लोगों से। अब वो क्वेश्चन क्या था? वो क्वेश्चन ये था कि what coding language to learn if you want to become better with data. That means if you want to become a data scientist, you want to become a data analyst, what language to learn? And once the poll was over after a week, 85% of people said that this is Python language. So majority of the people, 85% is the high majority, right? So 85% of the people said that this language is Python. Other options were like R, programming, SQL, and there was an option to comment as well that if you don't find these languages as of your choice, you can mention in the comment. This is how you can see, guys, that in data science community, in the data world, Python is obviously the dominant language. It has already become the dominant language. So if you are a complete beginner and want to learn Python programming, right? What are the steps that you need to go through? What are the kind of, different steps that you can take to become expert in Python programming? There are huge numbers of free resources available over internet, maybe link, YouTube videos, maybe free courses. But sometimes what happens, guys, if you have a lot of free information, right, you have no idea that how exactly to take forward and learn a particular language or a particular topic or a particular subject. So sometimes free resources make you overwhelmed. They might confuse you, right? So in this video, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you through a step-by-step process that how come you can learn Python programming and be good at it. So let's get it started, guys. So I'm going to share my screen with you where we would be discussing these things. So guys, this is a question, right? And as I said to you that 85% of the people said that Python is their language of the choice. Okay. Now guys, Python basically, comes in two versions, Python 2.x and Python 3.x. Now 2.x product line or PL is not active now. There is no new development happening right now on this. The new development happens in this product line, PL. And current version, this X keeps on changing, guys. The current version is 3.10, which is the latest feature release. Okay. So now, see, obviously Python has become a dominant language in data science domain or data domain, but Python is pretty much a generic, programming language. It has been used in web development. Okay. It is being used in game development. It is being used in automation. It is being used in analytics, right? So, there are a lot of kind of domain where Python can be used. So if you have a good expertise on this, right, job opportunities, going for a freelance work, right, or going for a remote work or a part-time work, Python can give you a good start in that, in terms of your skills, in terms of your expertise. So how to kind of start learning this programming language? Now guys, one more thing. Learning a new programming language, there can be two ways. If you already know of one programming language, let's say C or C++ or Java or any other programming language, moving to a new programming language is always easy because most of the concepts, right, remain same across all programming languages. It might be the syntax difference, but the kind of, how to solve a problem, or how to kind of write the business logic to solve a problem, right? That remains almost same. So if you already know one programming language, moving on to the Python becomes easy. But the Jan G, right, is, or like the new people who are in their 11th or 12th or are in college, most of them are directly starting with the Python programming, and that's also not an issue, right? You can directly start, and there is a an academic sort of people might give you an advice that first you need to learn C or C++, right? Then only you should move to the Python, right? That's not the kind of a point, right? You have to start from somewhere, whether it's Python being your first programming language or any other language as your first coding language. That doesn't make a difference. For every language you have to put sincere efforts, you have to make a practice, right? And whatever the language, you can learn it. So let's come back to our Python learning, guys. So how to get it started? So first of all, guys, you have to start with the setup. That means you have to set up your development environment. Like, and how come you can set up a development environment? There are two ways to actually do this. Maybe you can set up a integrated development environment, which is a software tool, on your local machine, on your laptop or on your desktop. Maybe you can install Anaconda Navigator. And this Anaconda Navigator is actually a package, guys, which comes with Spider, which comes with Jupyter, which comes with VS Code. So inside Anaconda Navigator, you can choose any IDE, and you can kind of start writing your Python code. Okay. The other way could be that you use online platforms to write the Python course, and for that purpose, you don't have to install anything on your local machine. Okay, maybe you can use Google Colab for that, right? And this HackerRank, HackerEarth, all of these kind of platforms give you an online platform where you can write the Python code. So there are two ways, so you can set up according to your requirement. Okay. Now you have to start with kind of a basics of the Python, basics. What do you mean by basics? So when we talk about the basic, like, we talk about that what are the various data types available, Python, what is integer, what is float, what is the string, right? All of those things. Okay. So you have to understand the data types, how to take input from the user, that you need to understand, how you can print, right? How to run conditional statements using if and else kind of a mechanism, how to run loops, right? So there are two loops available in Python. You can make use of while loop, or you can make use of for each loop as well. Okay, so for each I'm calling it, right? So little different from a C and C++. There is a for loop, but here is a for each loop. After going through the basics, right, and a best way to kind of master all these concepts is to practice more, guys. That's it, right? Practice, practice, and practice. After that, there is a concept called sequences in Python. So there are some internal data structures available in Python for a data management, where you can store a data. Okay, so in sequence, guys, it can be a strings. Okay, it can be list, it can be tuple, it can be byte sequences, it can be array sequences, and the range objects. So range is a function in Python which gives you a list, right? So those kind of things. And out of these sequences, guys, a couple of them are kind of mutable and a couple of them are immutable. So immutable means once you have initialized, it cannot be changed, it cannot be modified. So strings are immutable, strings are read-only in Python, right? But the list is something which can be changed, which can be kind of mutate, right? So it's a mutable. Okay, So list is something like that, right? So both ways are available in case of the sequences. What is your exact requirement? According to that, you can pick the right data structure to manage your data, or to store your data, or store your information. Okay. Now, after that, you need on to move to Python intermediate. What exactly in Python intermediate? The most likely here I would advise that you should be comfortable in making use of regular expressions in Python. That's very interesting and very critical as well, because regular expressions are used at a lot of places in data science, in analytics, and sometimes in data cleaning as well, or in data extraction as well, or data validation as well. There are a lot of kind of places where regular expressions are being used. So how you can make use of regular expressions, how to write your own expression, right, to meet out a certain condition, or to solve your problem. So that is something which you need to be very good at it. Okay. And then I would move on to guys file handling part, right? So if you want to make your data persistent, right, because what happens if you store a data in a variable, right, as soon as you close your ID, or as soon as you kind of finish your program execution, the information saved is lost, right? Because it was a variable, it was available on a stack. So if you terminate your execution, the data that was on the stack goes out, right? So if you want to make your data persistent, right, that means even after the execution of your code, you want to retain the information, right? What you can do, you can write that information in a flat file system. So kind of maybe you can write in a text file, or maybe you can write in a binary file. So file handling is something where you can kind of use to make your data persistent. A lot of people use databases as well, so I'll come to that database part. But like to begin with, you need to be good at file handling. So how to open a file, how to read or write, or how to close it, right? How to read the contents of a file, right? So there are a lot of variations around it. Then after file handling, let's focus on modules and packages in Python. So sometimes a lot of people use them interchangeably, but modules and packages are different. Okay, so module is actually a .py file which contains some Python function or some global variables, etc. Right? So it's a .py file. Package is actually a directory containing multiple, py files. Okay, package is a directory with a lot of .py files. So .py means Python files are saved with .py extension. This can be information for the beginners, or the people who are willing to learn programming language Python. Okay. So how to import a certain package, right? How to use import a keyword, right? So where you will find the right function. Okay, all of those things come inside modules and packages. Let's say you want to make use of regular expressions. So how you can say import RE. RE is actually a package, right? A library which you can use to write your own regular expressions. It has a lot of functions actually, right? It has a function search. It has a function find all. A lot of functions are there, right? Kind of 5 prominent functions are there. After modules and packages, you need to focus on functional programming aspect of Python. So basically, a functional programming language is a language where there is a no concept of looping, right? All the functional programming make use of recursions to implement the iterative nature of your business logic. So Python is a partially functional programming language because it has loops as well, but in a pure functional programming language like Erlang, you will never find a loop mechanism. But Python supports some of the features from the functional programming space, and there you can use the concepts like map, reduce, filter. So whenever you talk about handling a large data or a big data, right, you must have heard about Hadoop, you must have about Spark, right? All of these platforms, all of these software utilities are based on map reduce concept. It was kind of, if I remember correctly, uh, for the first time, there was a scientist at Google or an engineer called Sanjay Himawat who wrote the first paper regarding the map reduce. And from thereafter, all these platforms to handle, the distributed, computing or a large data or a big data handling, all of these platforms came into picture after this map reduce concept. So, you can very well use to solve a couple of your problems using map reduce. And filter is one more function there. So 3 primary functions in functional programming. Okay. After that, you let me clean this. So after that, you can move on to functions in Python. That how come you can write, functions in Python, how come you can make your code modular, right? So kind of putting your code very clean, right? If that is your requirement, you can make use of functions. So how to write your own functions, how to define them, what do you mean by return a statement, how to call them, that is something which you already know from other programming languages as well, right? Now, the next one is like a couple of things which I would call them as an advanced, because intermediate is something which we have already spoken. So Python advanced. Now, guys, Python is a language which supports object-oriented programming concepts. So that is something you need to be very, very good at it, right? So object-oriented programming concepts and how to kind of interact with the databases using Python code. So how come, you can connect with a relational database, let's say like MySQL or SQLite, right? Or how come you can connect with a non-relational database, let's say MongoDB, using Python programming. So how to write the code for that. So that is something you need to be very, very good at it, right? And after this, guys, one more thing, which is called as exception handling, right? So sorry. So exception handling. So how to make use of try, how to make use of except, how to make use of else, how to make use of finally. So exception handling is a kind of a best practice in software world where a good developer will always make use of exception handling techniques, so that later on, if the behavior of the code is not as expected, it helps them in debug it, right? And get to the kind of a cause of that problem, right? Or sometimes the user input is not correct, right? So in that case as well, there might be exception, and how, if there is an error, how to handle it, right? That's the whole story around exception handling. Okay. After that, there is one more concept called generators. Very interesting stuff. Generators, right? So in like how to make use of generators. So generator is actually a kind of a function that doesn't return single value, but it returns an iterator, right? And you do not make use of a return statement, you make use of a yield statement. Yield. So generator, they do not return a single value, right? But they will return an iterator. An iterator is something that you can use for some looping mechanism, right? And yield is kind of a keyword that is used here, not the return. Okay. After that, now this is the kind of a point, right? This is now where you can slightly move on to the data handling part or data analytics part. So how to handle the data in Python, right? So data handling is something that you can, kind of learn. So basics, that how to make use of, pandas, which is a very popular library, right, for data handling, how to make use of numpy, which is numerical Python, how to, perform mathematical operations on the data, right, and how to maybe visualize it using matplotlib. So that is something that you need to be good at. Okay. After this, one more thing, how to call the APIs, because when you are talking about the data handling, so data may not be available in your local machine, it may not be available on your local database, right? So you might have to call it from a remote location, and for that you need to know that how to call the APIs. Okay, so API calling is again let's say you want to build a weather application, right? So how come you can show the temperature of a city, right, which has been selected by the customer or the user of your application or user of your script, right? So maybe you can use a weather API like, Yahoo Weathers, or, there are a lot of weather APIs available. So you can call that and get the relevant information, right, for your user. So this is how you can, you should know how to call the APIs, how to call a post API, how to call a get API, right? And there are ways to do that, right? So how we can do this, what is the kind of request library that can help you to call a API. And after that, sometimes, you need a data, and to get the data, there is no API available, right? The data is available somewhere on the web, but there is no API to actually get the data, right? And in that case, guys, you might need to shift to web scraping. So web scraping is kind of extracting the data from a web page. Web scraping means extracting the data from a web page programmatically, not manually, right? Programmatically. And for that purpose, there is a very popular package available called Beautiful Soup, right? And if you want to perform some automation as well, that you don't have to do the things manually, the login should also automatically happen, right? And a couple of those kind of things or clicks should happen, right? For that purpose, you can make use of a tool called Selenium. Selenium is a very popular tool amongst the QA people, quality assurance people, the testing community, right? But here we are using Selenium for web scraping purpose. Now, guys, as I said, that Python is not limited to data science activities as well. You can build the web applications using Python, and there are two kind of frameworks available, right? Flask and Django. So if you have the interest in developing the web applications using Python, either you can go with the Flask or either you can go with Django. Okay, so Flask is a lightweight framework. Okay, if you want to really develop a full functional complex web application, go for a Django. There is a huge demand for Django developers in the market. Okay, but if you want to develop a UI for your data science application or your AI application, there is no need to go on the Django. You can use Flask, right? So using Flask, you can create a very good UI. You can create the forms, right? You can create the buttons and a lot of things. So obviously, when you talk about web development activities, you need to understand what exactly the HTML is, how to make use of CSS, and little bit information around the JavaScript is also required if you want to go into the web development. Okay, and finally, guys, after this, okay, unit testing. Okay, so this is something which, like, in academics, this is something which is kind of never covered, right? But if you have gone through a software development life cycle, okay, there is a concept of testing, right? That before making a release to the client, before making a final release, you need to test your application, test your code that you have written. So unit testing is something, right, which is actually a testing method, right? And what to test? The test the individual components of a software, right? Maybe individual component means the functions, let's say, right? The functions that you have written, the various functions that you have written. So individual components of the software, they are tested, right? And what is good, the testing team does not perform the unit testing. The developer itself performs the unit testing, the developer who writes the code. So developers write unit tests to detect and protect against possible bugs in the future. So this is probably the primary step in terms of quality assurance that your code is good, your code is bug free, right? Like, covering the it's very difficult to write 100% bug free code, but like how much you can push yourself so that your code has minimal number of bugs, right? So this is something. So unit testing, right? So there are certain packages and frameworks available in Python to write your unit test cases, right? So this is something, guys, okay, that if you follow these kind of, right, so you cover the first kind of a step and do the practice, take the next step, do the practice, right? So if you go this way, right, I think within a month to 45 days, this is my kind of a analysis. If you're putting every day 2 to 3 hours, in your preparation, you can really make a kind of a good confidence, right? Where you have the confidence that, yes, I can solve a problem in Python. Give me a problem, I will solve it, right? So this is something, guys, which you can kind of consider, right, as a strategy to learn and improve your Python skills. Okay, that's it for today and this video. If you like this video, please share, comment, and if you have any questions, I would be available in the comment section, guys. Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.